What's going on, everybody? I want to do a quick little message. I've had something that's been bothering me for a little while now, for a few months, and I've just been thinking about it and decided I want to make a video about it. We're taught in Scripture by our Messiah and by the apostles to beware of false prophets, right? It says they'll enter into the flock as wolves in sheep's clothing, ravenous wolves destroying the flock, right? Well, I'd like to point out something that I don't think a lot of people think about, right? Remember, our Messiah said his sheep hear his voice, they know him, and they follow him, which means they keep the commandments, right? So knowing him and following him and obeying him means that we obey and keep the commandments. So if we're doing that, people like us that keep the commandments, keep the Sabbath, keep the feast and things like that, we know what sheep look like. So if we're looking for these false prophets, these wolves in sheep's clothing, we shouldn't be looking out at the Sunday churches and places like that, where the big mega churches and stuff like Kenneth Copeland and Dana White and people like that all over the place in these new apostolic Reformation churches and the Sunday churches and Pentecostal and Baptist. I grew up Southern Baptist, the Catholic Church, all that kind of stuff. All those places, if we're looking for wolves in sheep's clothing, they're like, we're sheep. We should know that they're not wearing sheep's clothing. Those are wolves, but they're wearing wolves' clothing. They're point blank out there. It's very easy. If you're a sheep, it's very easy to identify those as wolves, right? We know that they're preaching false doctrine, so we don't obey them, right? If they're doing the Sunday and they're not teaching you that you got to eat clean, they're not teaching you about the feasts of the Lord. Those are wolves in wolves' clothing. But if we want to find out, if we want to be aware of these false prophets, those are not deceiving people like us. The actual sheep. There's people in those churches that people might say, oh, well, those are sheep too. Well, they're not yet. They're lost sheep. They can become sheep and come back into the flock, but currently they're lost. So those are not sheep. If those of us who are sheep know what sheep look like, sheep keep the commandments. Sheep obey God. They follow him and they hear his voice. So if we're looking for these wolves in sheep's clothing, we need to look amongst the sheep, right? So some of the wolves in sheep's clothing, they're going to be preachers that teach the commandments. They're going to be preachers that teach that it's okay, that you're supposed to keep the feast of the Lord and be obedient to the Father. They're going to teach obedience. But when we start seeing people wearing the Star of David or preaching that Israel over there is the Israel of God, these people know their Bibles good enough to know better than that. They're either... I find that most of these people are probably not deceived. They're probably intentionally deceiving people. Whereas the false churches out there, the wolves in wolves' clothing, some of those guys may actually be deceived. But these sheep that are wearing sheep, these wolves that are wearing sheep's clothing, they should know better by studying their scripture. So we have to be aware of those people. And some of these sheep, for example, a friend sent me a video a while back of Jim Staley, and then some friends sent me a video just the other day about Jim Staley talking about Hanukkah and stuff like that. And he was jumping around trying to justify keeping Hanukkah, not basing it off of scripture. It says we're not supposed to add to or take away from the commandments. Yet he was twisting certain scriptures and to use them to defend keeping an unbiblical holy day, or tradition, I should say, not even a holy day. So when we add this religious tradition, people that teach to add the Seder meal, and that you're supposed to light candles on the Sabbath day, and you're supposed to keep Hanukkah and do all these different things. That's not in Scripture. And even though these people teach that it's okay to keep the commandments, those are the wolves that are in sheep's clothing. That's what our Messiah was talking about. There are others out there that are horrendous as well. Another one is Monte Judah. I know people may get pissed off about this, hearing this, but we're supposed to call these wolves out. As a preacher of the way and the walking the way that Christ asked us to walk, we're called to call out these wolves. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be watchmen on the wall. We're supposed to see wrong and call it out. So that's what I'm doing. But Monte Judah, he wears the Star of David. He believes that those people in Israel, the Jews that are over there, those are God's people. He believes that they are the Jews. And some of those people may be, but he believes that these people that practice Talmud and Kabbalah, that they're actually followers of Christ. And that's just not the case. And a lot of these people, they believe that keeping these Jewish traditions like the Seder meal and Hanukkah and things like that is okay. We're explicitly told to follow the commandments of God, to hear his voice and follow him and not add to or take away. So there's a lot of false prophets out there. There's another one that concerns me as well that a lot of people I know, and I've watched them. I've watched all these people. But once I started seeing that they were adding to the scripture, that they were adding to the commandments and bringing in traditions, what our Messiah rebuked the Pharisees for adding traditions and holding their traditions above the commandments of God. So when I saw that, I had to quit watching these people. But another one, and this one's more of a wolf in wolf's clothing, but this is, and this guy's no longer with us, but his ministry was called Shepherd's Chapel. This guy preached much more, much closer to the scripture than any of the typical Sunday churches out there, but he still didn't realize that you're supposed to keep the Sabbath day, didn't lead people to obedience to the commandments, didn't lead people to keeping the feasts of the Lord and things of that nature. So he was really a wolf in wolf's clothing, but he can kind of blend into this category because he was preaching better than most churches. But I just wanted to bring this message to you guys because I think it's important to know, we have to know our enemy, right? The enemy is very deceptive. It says Satan would deceive the whole world. Well, how is he going to do it? He's doing it through religion. But those of us who are sheep, who follow the Messiah, we can see all these big preachers out here in the world. We can see that those are wolves. We can tell they're not wearing sheep's clothing. Those are straight wolves. So where are the wolves that are in sheep's clothing? They're amongst the flock. They're preaching stuff that sounds right. It sounds like it's okay, like we're obeying the commandments. Cool, check that block. We're keeping the Sabbath day, we're keeping the feast, we're obeying God and all these things. But they start adding back in these little traditions. That's the thing. Watch out for those people because those are the wolves in sheep's clothing. So I hope this helps you guys out. I don't want to do a long video, but I just wanted to do this because I think it's really important. I've seen a lot of people, friends of mine and family and people that I try to minister to as well, that are really hanging on to the doctrines of some of these people when they don't realize that those are the ones we were warned about. Those are the false prophets, muddying the water of the sheep, just like we were told in Ezekiel. They are the wolves in sheep's clothing. We're not worried about the wolves in wolves' clothing. We can see those from a mile away. We're worried about the wolves in sheep's clothing that are amongst the flock, blending in, teaching obedience, teaching things that make sense, yet they're tainting it with religious doctrine. So that's all I have for you guys. I hope this helps out. One more thing I'd like to point out, the reason we have to stay away from these wolves in sheep's clothing is because they have little tainted doctrines that will lead us astray. And I've seen this happen so many times from different people that are buying into these little doctrines taught by these people because they believe, okay, they got me to a lot of truth, but they're still off. That's why we have to be careful. We should not, if you find one of these preachers, if you're watching a preacher and you find that they're preaching something that is not in accordance with the Bible, you should completely cast them out and never entertain their doctrine ever again. They cannot be trusted. They're preaching lies. And even that little bit of leaven can leaven the whole lump, we're told. So we have to be very, very cautious. We should not accept any leaven, false doctrine into our brains. We shouldn't allow it at all. If these people, once we notice at the very onset that we notice that they're not preaching the truth, the full truth of the scripture, you got to toss them out because they should be more diligent in studying the scripture and shouldn't be preaching on things that they haven't studied appropriately. So anyway, I just wanted to add that little bit as a warning. So that's all I have, you guys. I hope this message has been helpful and beneficial, and I hope you guys can take this and use it to be able to identify these wolves in sheep's clothing.